a Nidoqueen, $100, and a niche Pokemon Nuzlocke playthrough.
Spizzles.
What? Why would I want that? These three unlikely things combined to make a competitive Pokemon format like no other. The Spizzle 500. In this video, I'm going to be showcasing not only this competitive format I've designed, but also the small 16-player tournament I hosted with it. There were insane plays, even more insane throws, tryhard teams, gimmick teams, bad teams. But I digress, because before we can even actually get into the battles themselves, it's important to answer the burning question. Dude, what the hell even is your format? Is what you're probably asking, as it's been around the 30-second mark and your attention span has already begun to wane. Here, little Family Guy funny moments to tide you over. Done. Can we get much higher? So high. Oh, 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 oh. It all started back when I hit 500 subscribers, and of course I wanted to celebrate. I'm big on community in my channel, and I have a core of some pretty dedicated viewers who I love to chat with in my streams,
Loser. What? What is that supposed to mean?
my comment sections, and my Discord. So I wanted to host a community event, and of course I got to thinking. My criteria was I wanted it to be something the most viewers were interested in, and the most viewers had access to. I also wanted to try and make it something creative. And so, with a quill dipped in ink, woolen socks on my feet, and a pack of peanut butter Oreos, I began to cook. I knew it had to be Pokemon themed, because, you know, that's what they subscribed for. But the issue was, what games could be played for free? So, of course, I used my critical thinking skills and landed on Pokemon Showdown, a free site that's on your browser where you can craft competitive Pokemon teams and battle real people. But that solution presented a new problem: accessibility.
Spizzles, didn't you just say it's free and everyone can play it?
Yes, Grasshopper, I did. But the problem wasn't a paywall, but rather a skill issue. The truth is, I had no idea how many people in my viewer base had competitive knowledge or would even be interested in doing competitive battles, as team building is arguably the hardest curve of knowledge in that scene of Pokemon. I didn't want my view base joining my event and then having to sit down for 45 minutes with Pokemon they may not even know and now must optimize them to fight against two people who actually already like competitive Pokemon and made S-tier gigashit meta teams. I thought about doing random battles, but you can be cracked at rand bats and still just lose to the RNG of the format, and so I felt I was at an impasse. How could I create a creative beginner-friendly tournament that would pique the interest of my viewers? After a long time of pondering the orb, it came to me. Mining away. I don't know what to mine, I'll mine this anyway. In this Minecraft day, so beautiful. This is when I realized I could take my Nuzlocke series and turn it into a competitive format. Since everyone would be able to access Showdown and everyone is familiar with the Pokemon involved, as the only thing I had really been posting was my Nuzlocke series. So this brings us to the question: what are the rules? And there are two answers to that. Firstly, the rules of my Nuzlocke series, as they actually do affect how the tournament is played. In my series that I call the Spizzle Lock, creative naming I know, every video I play through one Pokemon game as a generation lock, meaning the Elite Four and Champion survivors make it to the next game as level 5s. I also cannot repeat Pokemon. I got my hands on a Growlithe, that's it. After it is used in battle, it's either coming with me in the next game, staying behind the box, or getting packed. There are a few other little rules, but that's all that really matters right now. So, for the moment you've been waiting for. What are the rules of my format? Well, for starters, it's 6v6 singles Gen 4 format, anything goes. This was later changed to Ubers for future tourneys. The next rule is only Pokemon used in battle in Spizzle Lock from Sagas 1 through 3, meaning from Red, Blue, and Yellow to Fire Red and Leaf Green. Finally, appropriate nicknames. In classic Nuzlocke fashion, if you get that Wigglytuff, you better name it Booba! And that's it. Nature, abilities, and movesets can be whatever you want, obviously. Only the species and nickname have to be correct, and everything else is up to the player. And I decided to use Gen 4 instead of Gen 3 format for better move pools and the special physical split, which in my opinion made the game more fun and balanced. But there were also some secret rules. Rules I had not yet announced until the releasing of this video. The winner's team would be banned for the next tournament. I plan to redo this tournament every saga of my series, so to balance the meta while keeping options high and making things fun, whoever wins the tournament has their team banned for the next. Meaning if Trico somehow crosses the finish line, she's banned come Saga 4's tourney, but she'd be back and ready for action come Gen 5. thank goodness. So with my rule set complete, it was now time to rally enough people to host a tournament. Now, if only there was a way to convince people to do what I want. Yeah, I'll be giving no fucks. I know you've got on. I'll be giving no fucks. I say whatever I want. I do whatever I want. I'm counting up money for fun, and I'm popping these purchases for fun. After sending out shorts, asking people to spread the word, and promising $100 cash prize if we hit 32 members, we reached a grand total of 16 members. Hey, good enough. Let's go. Hey, future Spizzles, aka Editor Spizzles here. I forgot to mention, the next tournament is about to begin and you can be in it. Want to win $150? Want to join a beginner-friendly tournament? Want the chance to be featured in one of my videos? Then hurry up and join my Discord. Tag along to be part of the Spizzle 1000. If we get 32 members this time around, boom, 150 smackers on the table. Little incentive to have you all join and, you know, spread the word. We're really flexible about scheduling battles, and as you can clearly see, it's a whole lot of fun. Back to it. La 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 la, wait till I get my money right. Oh. Okay, I know you guys want to see the juicy battles, but trust me, part of the reason this tournament was so fun and interesting was the character. Much like how Gen X circles the colorful cast of WWE like vultures to fresh roadkill, people were taking notice to the stakes and predictions behind these battles. I'm not going to go over all 16 people, but here are some key characters to keep in mind. Me, of course, Clumsy, and Parker. These two are, in my opinion, the greatest minds of the tournament. Although they're no Wolfie, they stay on top of the current meta, and they frequently build and test new teams, and they love to team build. These guys were the terrifying titans who I especially did not want to face. Benjamin, my old YouTube partner and my brother. He's a pretty solid comp player, although he's fallen off the wagon years ago, and he was the man who actually got me into competitive Pokemon and taught me all the basics. So I was super excited to see him dust himself off and enter my tournament. Pedro, one of my top chatters in stream who would often give me advice on plays during the Spizzle Lock. I was super hyped to see what this guy could do. To a lot of people in this tournament, he ended up being the super overpowered antagonist of the story, and you'll see why. Muddle Puns, a true underdog. This guy periodically appears in my streams and server, and he's always a fun guy to talk to. He was the underdog though, as he said he was a pretty solid player but had no competitive experience. But hey, all I gotta say is, let him cook! Now, obviously, everyone in this tournament had a role to play, and just because they weren't mentioned here doesn't mean they aren't interesting people or didn't make it far in the tourney. That's not it at all. Every player is going to be talked about at least a little bit during the battles. I'm just planting the seeds so as we analyze the battles and climb our way to the top, we have a general idea of the hierarchy of power within this tournament. As for predictions, Pedro seemed very adamant they would win, but I had my eyes on Parker personally. After a bunch of wheel spins and assembling a bracket, I sent out an announcement and the tourney finally went underway. Colors weave into a spire of flame. Distant sparks call to a past still unnamed. Bear this torch against the cold of the night. Search your soul and reawaken the undying light. Alright, now we're here. The first chapter where we actually see battles go down. Let's get into it. You know how these go. 16 fighters go in and 8 come out. And since most battles in the tournament needed to go underway this round, I gave my participants extra time to schedule their battles. Speaking of which, I should probably run... Now, I feel like the best battle to lead off with here would have to be Parker versus Clumsy. You heard that right. Parker versus Clumsy. Arguably the most dominant threats in the tournament happen to be assigned each other as round 1 opponents. The battle begins and the leads alone show the state of the meta. Fair warning, Nidoqueen will be on just about every team, as not only is it strong and bulky, but the sole setter of both Stealth Rocks and Toxic Spikes. And of course, since we were playing during the Gen 9 era, everyone and their mom thought Toxic Spikes was like the most important part of the battle because heavy duty boots didn't exist in this generation. However, Parker came prepared. Since this was Gen 4, Machamp had access to No Guard. Pairing that with Dynamic Punch, he had a stab, 130 attack stat, 100 base power move that always landed and always confused. Broken? Yes, but just another reason to run Nidoqueen at the end of the day.
Parker sets Substitute as both sides take little damage. After some trading turns, Clumsy switches to Arcanine, which gets destroyed by Star Platinum as it switches out to Mortis, who gets hit with Toxic. We then learn Clumsy had taught Arcanine Morning Sun, allowing it to regain some lost HP and switch out to Hope the Absol. Parker then gets huge value, sending out Sea Moon, setting up Stealth Rocks and a Toxic Spike, and almost getting a KO on Absol before switching out again to a Hope of their own. Clumsy makes an interesting play, sending in Sea Moon to be KO'd, and out comes Toad, one of the hands down scariest threats of the meta. Remember how this tourney was set to anything goes? This Pokemon made me change that, as it knew Spore, and without Sleep Claws, it could just put all 6 Pokemon to sleep, completely walling any strategy. But Parker seemed to already know this, as they predict a Spore and go to a Toxic Mortis. Between Toxic and a low HP and defensive stats against a Poison Heal Seed Bomber, Toad comes out on top. Parker then sends out Light the Raichu, who one-shots with an Ice-type hidden power. We then see the most interesting team selection choice of the tourney so far, Wigglytuff. Specifically, pre-Gen 6 Wigglytuff. What could this Pokemon even do in this format? Not much, apparently. Parker gets a Psycho Cut immunity into Hope, and it looks like Clumsy is pushed against the wall. Although Intimidate was a good play, it simply wasn't enough, as Parker had built enough momentum and positioning over the course of the battle to easily handle both Arcanine and Dusclops. Hope hits the field and falls to Hazard, moving Parker to the next round. Moving straight into our next battle, we have Boblet Goblet versus Pedro. And oh my god, this battle was... Here, just take a look. A super good start of the match for Pedro, as Boblet switches turn 1, allowing free Stealth Rocks, and a missed Dynamic Punch, allowing a KO with Flamethrower. If you haven't picked up yet, another reason this beast is on every team is because her move pool is wider than Yo Mama. Ronaldo and Sea Moon trade half health, and then for some reason, Boblet goes for Aaron, getting 1 shot. Mazail comes out, 1 shot. Mortis comes out, obliterated. For some reason, Pedro goes for Ice Beam, and after 4 Pokemon and some change, Pedro's first Pokemon was finally defeated. Pedro then makes another shocking play. You see, these battles were publicly available and archived, meaning the only way for your team's movesets and members to be revealed was through other people watching your battle. And Pedro was in an optimal decision where he could have won with just 2 Pokemon, leaving his other 4 a mystery going into the next round. Yet, for some reason, he just starts switching around and reveals both Mazail and Jade to be on his roster. Nonetheless, Jade easily finishes the battle, moving Pedro to the next round. You see what I mean when I said Pedro was the antagonist? Bro ran up and almost soloed with Nidoqueen. Like, who are you, Giovanni? And then he was like, I'll let you take this one out, and then reveal 3 other team members for no reason. What is this guy made of? Anyways, next we move on to a battle I was most excited to see. Benjamin versus Fireworks, the man who had got me into competitive Pokemon's debut battle. It was time to see if he still had that dog in him. Fireworks leads with Aggron. Benjamin, who I'll call C4, leads with Volbeat? It was clear to me in that moment C4 had a gimmick in mind, and I was here to see it unfold. He immediately switches to Sea Moon. Editor Spizzles note, I talked to him after the battle, and he said he not only made this team last second in like 20 minutes, but he also forgot to switch Sea Moon to his leader spot. But the damage was done. Curse Aggron one-shot Sea Moon. Fireworks makes a strange heat wave play in. Oh, Stone Edge into Focus Dash. I was not expecting that one. Air Slash into Machamp, but he secures the KO. Mortis comes out and takes it with a Nightshade. Camelot at a clear disadvantage, but it's anyone's battle, folks. Solrock is out and sets Stealth Rocks into Hariyama. Trick Room and Guts set up, and Solrock gets obliterated. Pelipper is out next, and Trick Room ends up aiding Hariyama for the facade, but Pelipper secures KO same turn. Roost does little to help as Pelipper is crippled by Discharge, and an emergency switch to Volbeat is deployed. Trick Room ends, Ice Fang lands, and Tail Glow is set. Can Camelot pull things off before it's too late? A switch to Aggron and Thunder one-shots. After some unlucky rolls, he sacrifices Pelipper and goes for Volbeat, who can't take the heat, and we're back to Manectric, who has lost their boosts. Thunder finally lands for big damage, but Salic Berry activates and the lead is too large to come back from. C4 secures the KO against all odds, but an extreme speed Arcanine checkmates and finishes the battle. Benjamin was knocked out of the tournament, round 1. I talked with him after the battle, and that's when he revealed to me about the situation of his team. Although I forget why Trick Room Solrock was on the team, the general plan was setting up Rain with Pelipper, Baton Pass Tail Glow with Volbeat, and then have a +2 Thunder Manectric and Rain to sweep, but multiple factors played into this strategy kind of falling apart. But that battle I just watched made me think about my progress as a competitive player. and how much C4 was going through in life, where he didn't have much time to sit down and play games with his friends. So I wanted to carry the legacy, to have the torch passed on, and take the know-how originally bestowed to me by C4 and take down my opponent, no matter how strong they were. I looked over the team I built and got ready to Wait, what? What? No show? No show, bruh. I progressed to the next round. Speaking of no show, Simpo was also a no show, allowing Poseidon to move on, leaving us with 2 more battles before the quarterfinals. Muddle Puns versus Eggbo. Another classic Seamoon lead into surprise Pikachu play. However, the switch out to Slicer X gives Muddle Puns a free Stealth Rock. Seamoon taunts and Eggbo obliges, dishing out a Surf into a Seamoon with Pasho Berry, softening damage. Muddle Puns sacrifices Seamoon for a full hazard setup. Raichu and Ludicolo hit the field, but Ludicolo hits it much harder. Light uses Grass Knot before switching into Breloom. Ice Beam pushes Toad into KO range and freezes, walling the meta's most dominant threat. Toxic's beginning to stack as Salsa reaches half health and Takero comes out. An Extreme Speed meant Takeo fails, allowing Takero to also be taken into red before Salsa falls. Why did he not just use Extreme Speed? Anyway, Slicer X versus Toxic Pikachu, and Muddle Puns sets Swords Dance. Light Ball Light hits Thunder, but Slicer X was wielding a Focus Sash. He then Swords Dances again. I think it's over, but Muddle Puns pulls out Aqua Jet and KO's Light. Hildenzomb's out next, and meets the same fate as Light. Muddle Puns is making a comeback, but can he keep things up? Evil Rigby lowers the attack by 1 stage, allowing it to barely survive an Aqua Jet and KO Kabutops. But the value Muddle Puns acquired was huge. He finishes off Evil Rigby, and it's a 2v2. Seamoon is revealed to be the final Pokemon, and I could not tell you why it wasn't thrown out sooner to remove Toxic Spikes and set some of its own, but whatever. Muddle Puns also reveals his final Pokemon in Duck Duck the Wobbuffet. He tanks a couple attacks as he sets Charm. Eggbo decides to set hazards and even go for physical moves, possibly predicting Muddle Pun's strategy to bottleneck the mixed attacker's choices to purely special. Despite the misplays this match, this was truly an instance of high-level Pokemon mind games. However, Eggbo eventually takes the bait and Dragon Pulses, getting hit back for big damage in return. And another Mirror Coat finishes things off. From there, the game is set, and Muddle Pun spams Destiny Bond and secures victory. Something you'll come to notice about Muddle Puns throughout all his battles in this tournament is the best way I can describe his playstyle is like Ash Ketchum. He's not bad by any means. In fact, he actually makes great plays. It's just, you'll often see him making risky, unexpected, and downright fun plays that have you on the edge of your seat, or just laughing at his poor opponent. Limesai versus Blindsai. Blinky? Oh man, I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's another Machamp Nidoqueen lead, and Limesai sets up Stealth and Spikes as Machamp tries to break through Nidoqueen. Dynamic Punch confuses Limesai, who interestingly sets Rain while Machamp substitutes. Seamoon gets some sub damage and falls to Machamp. It was now time for Limesai's strategy to come into play. Thunder, Rain Dance, Electrode. Why didn't she play around substitute? Well, I guess because she's bad, simple as that. But anyway, she then sends out Lunatone and uses Explosion. Porygon 2 falls to Dynamic Punch. Limesai throws out her own Machamp and finishes things off. It's beyond me why she didn't equip Ice Punch, but despite heavy damage to her, she KOs Altaria. And she also manages to take down Toad the Breloom, but unfortunately for her, Absol outspeeds and KOs with Psycho Cut. Her final Pokemon hits the field, Hope, and it's a 1v3. Despite paralysis and recover spam, she squeaks out another KO before falling to Absol, getting further along into the battle than I thought she would, and with that the entry round is over. Here's the new bracket. With half the roster being booted and some interesting eliminations in Benjamin and Clumsy, this tournament was unfolding to be pretty eventful. Although I was disappointed in the no-shows during round 1, it was to be expected. And although I was bummed on missing out, I was also nervous of getting clapped frame 1 of my own tournament, so now I could at least say I made it to the quarterfinals. With that, let's get right into it. With Blindsai's victory last round, I think it would be interesting to show off their next battle against none other than Parker. Blindsai leads Breloom and uses Seed Bomb on Parker, who switches out into Dusclops to take the hit. Mortis is put to sleep and out comes Altaria. It's looking like Parker's cooked already, but then he surprises us with Sleep Talk, using Rest. But this, my dear viewer, gets so much worse, as this moment proceeds to be one of the most infamous games in the tournament. Parker's Dusclops used Rest on Sleep Talk not once, not twice, but 3 times in a row. Before waking up, just to use Sleep Talk and fail. These 4 lost turns allowed Altaria to set up 2.5 times attack and speed with Dragon Dance. That's more than a Swords Dance and an Agility. Parker predicts an Earthquake and switches to Hildenzum, who activates their Flame Orb, but it just isn't enough as Altaria simply outspeeds and one-shots with a ridiculous outrage. From there, Altaria was simply able to sweep Parker's carefully crafted team and advance on to the semifinals. This came as a shock, as Parker actually has real competitive experience under his belt and making the mystery of Blindside grow even further. Limesai was bested last round, but she's a casual player, yet they actually ended the battle on pretty even terms. Yet Blindside ran away with this game, easily crushing Parker. Now obviously, although Parker chose to stay in on Mortis, getting 4 lost turns in a row is just due to bad RNG and it's hard to play around, especially against the sweeper. All of this meant we had no idea how powerful Blindside truly was, yet all we did know was they were advancing on to the semifinals. And now, it was time for Pedro versus Fireworks. Moon against Aggron lead and Pedro sets rocks. Aggron almost secures KO with EQ, but Pedro OHKOs with EP. Fireworks sends out Hariyama and detects to stall out the turn and activate Flame Orb. However, even Guts close combat wasn't enough and Boone falls to Nidoqueen. Takeru then also falls to Nidoqueen, and in a single hit, Fireworks, too scared to risk wiping the Moon, spams Destiny Bond until they both just succumb to the move. It was now a 5 versus 2, and Fireworks threw out Quandale against Jolteon. Shh, that's a Jolteon. After rocks, Quandale is then one shot by a T-Bolt, and it's Jolteon versus Jolteon. Pedro switches to Machamp, who gets paralyzed. Fireworks tries to chip away with Discharge, but it simply isn't enough, and a single Earthquake ends the battle, moving Pedro to the semifinals, as well as revealing his last 2 Pokemon. After seeing that last battle, I was prepared for mine. But there was only one issue: scheduling. You see, if you were paying attention to the battles that were ongoing, you may have noticed even after the 2 bypasses, we were 1 battle short of our 8 battle entry round, and that's because there was a looming issue at hand. You see, these quarterfinal battles were actually taking place soon after the entry round, since people wanted to be proactive as possible, as the windows for scheduling battles during these rounds were only around 36 hours, so the earlier the better. So while everyone was duking it out and finding their way to the semifinals, there was one battle that had not even commenced yet: Zero versus Waleep. So as I watched these 3 quarterfinal battles commenced, I had to wait out the clock as Waleep wasn't responding to messages, but there was allegedly a scheduled battle meet time between the 2, so the plan was, per tournament rules, for me to wait out the clock. And if they didn't battle, whoever was least proactive in scheduling would be eliminated. So while those 2 sort out their shenanigans, let's just move on to the next battle, shall we? Next up, we have Poseidon versus Muddlepuns, and it's the Ball versus Moon. Muddlepuns taunts and sets rocks, but Golem simply KOs with 2 EQs. The surprise play of Light comes out, and she one-shots with a Grass Knot. Poseidon throws out his Manectric to counter, but Muddle switches to Duck Duck, who this time is easily handled with a couple flamethrowers. After some switch outs, we have Takaro versus Mazael, who gets burned at half health and KO'd after trading hits. Poseidon cleans up Arcanine with Manectric. Muddlepun's Raichu and Poseidon's Manectric exchange huge damage, but Light claims victory. Poseidon sends out Toad and Mach Punches, and Muddlepun's Mirror plays. Brick Break lands and Muddlepuns puts Poseidon to sleep. Muddlepuns then uses Bulk Up, and then uses Focus Punch like a mad lad, and Poseidon Breloom stays asleep for it to land, one-shotting. Muddle Mach Punches and then Spores while Ronaldo uses Yawn. After a few turns, Muddle wakes up, just to use Spore on a sleeping Ronaldo, who wakes up and EQs. Muddle puts Ronaldo right back to sleep and sets up 2 greedy bulk ups and then tightens focus, but Ronaldo wakes up in time to Ice Punch. Toad barely survives, but loses focus in the process. This time Muddle goes right for the kill after sporing and KOs with a Focus Punch, and then finishes the battle with a 2.5 times boosted, 4 times super effective Mach Punch. Remember what I said about Muddlepun's Ash Ketchum level plays? Yeah, I wasn't lying. I mean, look at his Breloom. Spore, Bulk Up, Mach Punch, Focus Punch. No Seed Bomb, no Brick Break, just straight gas, all or nothing. And now, for the moment you've all been waiting for. My first battle in the tournament. Let's see who won. Bruh, neither of them showed up? After getting into contact with them and finding out the scheduling conflict was due to time zone confusion and Waleep going on a date, I had to make a difficult decision. If I didn't have an opponent, I would be bypassed twice in a row, sending myself all the way to the semifinals without even facing a single opponent. So, to make things as fair and lenient as possible, I sent out a big announcement. We are the champions, my friends. In order to give myself an opponent for the quarterfinals and to give Zero and Will another chance, the losers bracket was formed. On top of that, this gives characters like Benjamin and Clumsy another shot at entering the tournament and winning the whole shebang. Here, let's get the bypasses out of the way. Starting off, Maisie and Zero forfeited their match, allowing Benjamin and Clumsy a free advance to the next round. So we move on to the return of Boblet Goblet versus Eggbo. Bob Stakaro immediately packed up Light, and then he switched to Toad upon Slicer Rex hit in the field. Brick Break Oko's, and then crit Oko's Ludicolo. Boblet switches to Quagsire, and Eggbo makes the interesting play of using Fly on Hildenzomp. This was actually an interesting technique, as usually Guts users will run Fake Out, or a Protect move in order to stall out and activate their status. But Eggbo had the ingenious idea to use Fly, to both have that Protect and status activation while carrying momentum and doing damage the next turn. However, after trading blows, Hildenzomp falls and Seamoon cleans up. Boblet misses 2 dynamic punches, losing Toad. Takeru and Seamoon get each other low, and Eggbo uses Evil Rigby for Intimidate, while Boblet switches to Aggron. Doing little damage, Eggbo decides to roar, and Mazael comes out. 2 Dragon Claws end the battle, allowing Boblet to advance. Next up, Parker versus Waleep. Another casual player. Waleep actually recorded his POV, so I hope you enjoy. It's actually the funniest battle in the tournament.
Oh my god, what is that? Oh my god, what is that?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Hold up. Wait a minute.
Quoting Parker after that battle, "When I saw him use Karate Chop, I just knew." Alright, trying to keep this losers bracket nice and quick, so let's move on right ahead to the losers semi-finals with Parker versus Benjamin. This was a very interesting matchup to me because although I absolutely wash Parker in singles, Parker has sort of been my new master in teaching me how to play doubles, so seeing these two get to duke it out would be interesting, even though I already knew Benjamin's team was far too niche and rushed to win. If you're watching this, sorry dude. Starting things off with C4 able to swap party members, he leads with Soul Rock this time, with Parker of course leading Machamp. An unlucky confusion turn walls C4 strategy though, as the power was too great for Luna to handle. Parker sets Substitute and C4 explodes. Pelipper and Machamp trade blows and Parker pivots to Dusclops while C4 uses Roost. Rain Dance is set and they proceed to exchange blows. Raichu comes out and C4 pivots to Seamoon, tanking Fake Out and activating a Poison Point. Light's Hidden Power, Ice, and Protect isn't enough against Nidoqueen, setting Hazard, so they switch to their own Nidoqueen. They duke things out, and although Parker landed Stealth Rocks, C4 managed to get a very lucky freeze. However, this luck was short-lived as it thawed same turn and did major EQ damage. Dusclops is back out and gets KO'd by Seamoon. Parker sends out Hope, who secures the KO. The battle is looking much more even than I thought, and Manectric finally hits the field, doing huge damage with a surprise signal beam. However, Absol was too strong as a crit Psycho Cut one-shots. Pelipper manages to squeeze out a Roost, giving it the necessary HP to KO Absol. It heals on Star Platinum as it sets sub, but it doesn't matter as Penny demolishes this Avengers level threat Pokemon. It's a 3v3, and it's Machamp against Light. Light easily KOs Machamp and Squish is forced onto the field. Although they had even numbers, the power level of Parker's Pokemon was simply too high, and Squish fell to Light, luckily stalling out enough turns to secure KO. Hildenzom against C4's final Pokemon, Penny the Pelipper. He roosts, but Guts activates and Facade KOs, ending the battle. It's now time for Clumsy versus Boblet. Seamoon takes hefty damage, setting a Toxic Spike, and Boblet goes Ronaldo. Clumsy stalls and then switches over to Breloom, who KOs Quagsire. Boblet sends out Mazail and almost OHKOs with Flamethrower, but Toad manages to land Spore, using a superpower and failing to do enough damage. Booba comes out as Mazail wakes up, and he tanks Dragon Claw. Toad is switched back in, and Booba wishes and heals Seamoon. It was then where it clicked for me. Booba wasn't able to be properly utilized last round, but here, it was able to reach its full potential. Booba was a Stallmon. In fact, Clumsy's entire team was based around Stall. Seamoon manages to complete Toxic Spikes and KO Takeru. From there, it took out Altaria and switched to Mortis, who got paralyzed and special defense dropped. Boblet sends out a Mortis of his own, and then Booba comes out for Shadow Ball. Yeah, this whole match is kind of hard to narrate because with Dusclops and Wigglytuff being around and a couple Protect users, this sort of was just a battle of Stall. This is literally the battle on hyper fast and sped up on top of that. What you gotta know is Seamoon got the drop on Mortis and Aaron then stalled out Breloom, allowing Clumsy to 6-0 Boblet and advance to the loser finals. Which, I sound like a broken record, but this matchup was very interesting as it was the first time where two players would rematch each other. As Parker took out Clumsy in the entry round, it was going to be a lot of fun seeing Clumsy have a shot at redemption. Parker leads Machamp and Clumsy leads Seamoon. A battle of offense versus defense. Despite Seamoon walling Machamp, Clumsy goes into Takeru for Intimidate and resists a critical Ice Punch. Parker sends out Nidoqueen. Takeru does huge damage, but then Clumsy switches out for Hope, who loses most health on an EQ. Clumsy goes back to Takeru as Parker goes into Dusclops. Clumsy heals and sets Toxic before Parker sends back out Star Platinum. They KO each other and it's Hope versus Hildenzom. Hope superpowers, while Swellow switches out next turn for Mortis. Wigglytuff switch in and, oh boy, uses Wish to set up Toad safely. Parker predicts Spore and goes to Hildenzom, who KOs. Parker gets a Toxic Spike up in exchange for their Nidoqueen. Clumsy protects and then switches in Mortis to wall Hildenzom and take it out with Burn. There was then a super long stretch of battle I refuse to narrate where they just continuously predict each other, switch in and out, use Wish, use Protect, stall out turns, and whatnot. It was a long and grueling battle between the two competitive titans yet again. Clumsy took down Dusclops, Parker took down Wigglytuff. Clumsy took down Absol, Parker took down Absol. But Light was too low and the poison consumed her, leaving Clumsy the winner and champion of the loser's bracket, making him my opponent.
Spizzles first blood, la la la. Spizzles first blood, la 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 la. Spizzles first blood.
I was hoping for Parker to win because he sucks at singles on the down low. But Clumsy I was scared for. Regardless, I had to face him. I originally recorded the entire match, as well as my live commentary for several other matches I watched live. Unfortunately though, my OBS actually shit its digital pants and lagged to the point where the footage is damn near unwatchable. Despite the commentary being like S tier, and although I would love to go in and splice the audio to a replay of the battle for you guys, I can't because I'm lying and I would hate doing that. And I don't make a dime off this shit, so you're getting my play-by-play instead. But first, I'd like to talk about my team. Here it is. Now, let's do a quick run-by of my build. Hildenzom, Machamp and Breloom counter and best flying type in the format, as well as arguably the best Guts user. I can also pivot and stall with Roost and U-turn. Seamoon, one of the best in the format, period. I made mine extra defensive. Light. I'm gonna be honest. After extensive arguing and bitching with Parker in a Discord call ranking all Pokemon in the format, go check that video out by the way when it comes out, Manectric is just better. And I didn't really need Light on my team, but I'll be damned if I, the creator of the Spizzlelocken tournament, didn't try and win with my first Pokemon of the challenge. Next is Arcanine. Intimidate is invaluable in a format full of Swords Dance users, and it also has a pretty versatile move pool, including healing moves, priority, status, and overall massive damage. The items on my other Pokemon I think are pretty self-explanatory, but I specifically chose Lum for Arcanine as Toxic Spikes are undoubtedly very common, and with my only stab move doing potential huge recoil, I couldn't afford a whole lot of chip damage. It would also give me another opportunity to counter Spore Breloom. My final two picks were much more uncommon, generally speaking. Hariyama saw decent usage, and I had it as a backup Guts user, but more importantly, as a Swellow counter. I had predicted Pokemon like Swellow and Crobat, hell even Altaria, to be huge threats that outsped checks like my Raichu, so I gave Hariyama Ice Punch and Guts. But instead of the typical Flame or Toxic Orb to activate it, I chose a Koba Berry, which have the damage of super effective flying type attacks, allowing me to bait a Brave Bird, tank it, and hopefully one-shot. The one flaw is I have to rely on Toxic Spikes being set in order to activate Guts. And with how dominant I correctly predicted Nidoqueen would be, it was a risk I was willing to take. And finally, Hypno, the most controversial choice of my team. I chose it for two purposes, to set screens and hard counter Breloom. It was also nice because with powerful poison and fighting types on practically every team, and with its significant bulk paired with light clay screens, I would be able to easily take a Dynamic Punch or Brave Bird as well as block Sleep with Insomnia. However, you may notice this was not my Hypno's ability, as when I submitted my team to Doopy for finalization, I forgot to change its ability. Not completely stripping it of purpose, but still damaging its role on my team. Regardless, it was time to put my team to the test and face Clumsy to see who would make their way to the semifinals. I lead Mr. Cosby into Sea Moon. Clumsy immediately switches to Absol, allowing me to set a free Reflect. I then bring in Arcanine. He counters with his own and I go to Nidoqueen. I set a Spike and get put to sleep, going back to Arcanine. We tank Superpower and we Flare Blitz Nidoqueen. This was a battle of mind games, switching to resists and picking each other apart, trying to find an opening or a weakness, because I knew his team was stalled. I couldn't go for an all-out offense. At this point of the battle, his Wigglytuff uses Heal Bell, and I know I'm in for trouble. I try and chip damage with Light, but I fall for Booba's Cute Charm. I knew the only way I could win is if I broke this stall Wigglytuff. I'm luckily able to do huge damage to Hope. A lot of turns go by here where not a whole lot of interesting stuff happens, so I'll fast forward a bit here. It's a long game. At this point here, I end up sacrificing my Nidoqueen, who just wouldn't wake up, in order to have a safe switch in. And at turn 35 is when the first Pokemon in battle finally fell. Clumsy gets greedy and thinks Mach Punch is enough to KO, but we hang on in one shot, costing us Takeru. I then make a huge blunder. I was predicting a switch to Nidoqueen here, so I Hidden Power Iced. Had I used Thunderbolt, I could have KO'd, and the battle perhaps could have gone way differently. But alas, it is what it is. After a ton of traded hits, we finally land Paralysis. We used this opening to predict Heal Bell and set another Reflect. I then set up Calm Mind. I knew I had to formulate a push now, as Clumsy had managed to exhaust my team slowly over time while keeping his own healthy. However, Absol walls any chance of attacking I have, and Cosby falls. I send out Light, and I misclick, wasting a turn on Fake Out. I decide at this point, it's 3v5, my team's exhausted, and I'm losing ground. So I try one more time for an all-out offensive. I go to Hilton Zom and tank Psychic, then crit one-shot Mortis. I then make a W switch predict on Clumsy's Nidoqueen to get much needed damage on Arcanine. Light falls, and I go Fake Out with Boone for KO. 2 versus 3, much more winnable now. I take out Absol, and Booba is out next, so I take a page out of its book and also begin to stall. However, I had one thing this Pokemon didn't. It was time. I was in the lead, and that Protect allowed me to heal fully. We almost KO each other with a single hit. I decide to roost, and Clumsy makes a 400 IQ play and earthquakes, connecting and securing the KO. I honestly have no idea why I didn't attack, truth be told. I mean, I was scared to lose, so I overlooked the very simple fact I outsped. The win was in my hands, and I threw it out the window. Hariyama's out last, and I'm outsped and KO'd. Although I definitely would have won if I had played better, since I made multiple mistakes, including one where I literally just chose not to win. At the end of the day, I didn't win. Clumsy beat me fair and square, and so I had this to say to him. Alright, you know what?
That is so...
Clumsy,
Yeah.
you're the better player, you're better than me. I don't know what I was yapping about. I'm the yapaholic. I said a lot of things I shouldn't have said. I'm not your daddy. Maybe I'm your older brother, but that's another conversation.
Maybe I'm your son, you know?
No. It's 1-1. It's 1-1. But that I say this, right? You gotta beat... If you beat me here, you gotta beat Pedro. I just want to let you know, you gotta beat Pedro. He's a monster. He's unlike anything I've ever seen. And if I can't beat him, you gotta beat him. Alright? Peace out.
Ooh.
Last game.
Oh, what a fucking game.
That was
What
honestly,
a
GG. That was
fucking
insane.
game.
Turn 67 is where it
Edge of my seat. What a game. Holy shit.
Although you all missed out on all the funny commentary, I'm glad I at least still got to use something from that recording. Now that I was defeated, the brackets can continue as we head on to the semifinals. Going back to Pedro, he now finally crossed paths with Blindsai, and everyone was on the edge of their seat. Could he truly stop Pedro from steamrolling his way to the finals? This is the ultimate showdown of ultimate destiny. Good guys, bad guys, and explosions. As far as the eye can see. The first battle of the semifinals commences, and Blindsai immediately puts Seamoon to sleep and KOs with Seed Bomb. Pedro, interestingly enough, not switching out, perhaps in disbelief his Needle Queen could fail him. Metric's out next, and Blindsai tries to bait an electric type attack by tracing abilities with Jade, but Pedro was going for the Toad KO. We see some good back and forth, Blindsai keeping Pedro on his toes, before finally, Pedro gets a KO on Mazael, taking big damage in the process. However, Toad takes revenge on Slicer X, with Jolteon then taking out Hope, Toad taking out Jolteon, Star Platinum taking out Jade, revealing to us his Machamp actually ran Guts as opposed to no guard. It's a neck and neck 3v3 now, and Pedro sacrifices Porygon 2 in order to save his Machamp. Despite paralysis and confusion, Pedro's low HP Machamp pulls through and OHKOs with Facade, before falling to Toad. It's a 1 against 2, and to make matters worse, Pedro was put to sleep immediately. However, in the nick of time, Mazael awakes, D-dances, and EQs for the one-shot on Aaron, doing big damage to Toad before falling back asleep. Out of what I assume to be panic, Blindsai spams a few superpowers, but in the end it nullifies his attack stat, meaning even Seed Bomb did no damage, allowing Altaria to wake up and finish the battle, advancing Pedro to the finals. We finally saw Pedro put under a real struggle, but that wasn't enough to bar him from having a chance at winning the title of Spizzle 500 champion. It was going to be up to one of these two fighters to try and take him out. That being said, onto Clumsy versus Muddlepuns. The king of losers, the defeater of hosts, versus Muddlepuns. It's a queen on queen fight with Clumsy taking the W, Muddlepuns getting off a valuable stealth rock in the process. Booba's dishing Toxics, and Light almost takes the KO with Focus Blast before pivoting to Toad, and after some more switch-arounds, Muddlepun secures KO on Mortis, and then plays around Clumsy's Wish Stall with Bulk Up, puts Hope to sleep before Takaro one-shots Toad. Muddlepun's own Takaro comes out and finally breaks the stall wall that is Booba. It seems Seamoon is going to end this Pooch's luck, but Muddlepuns whips out yet another surprise strategy in Resto Chesto strats instead of Morning Sun. Takaro then takes down Seamoon, Hope, and Clumsy's Takeru, and Clumsy is back down to a 1v4 with Toad. Winnable, but unlikely. Duck Duck comes out for the checkmate, but Clumsy puts it to sleep and tries to go for the KO. But fortune favored Muddlepuns as it woke up and countered, one-shotting and pushing Muddlepuns to the finals. I couldn't believe it. None of my predictions for who would have made it to the finals were correct, and although I knew Pedro would go far, Muddlepuns was way out of left field, as he had no practical competitive experience. For the finals, the tournament rules were a best of 3 would be held. The first battle begins, and they both lead with Seamoon.
I want to be the very best, like no one ever was.
Pedro one-shots, showing the might of his ace Pokemon. Muddle sets up Swords Dance with Slicer X, surviving on Focus Sash and failing to one-shot, costing him another Pokemon. He sends out Light, and against all odds, one-shots with an Ice-type hidden power. Muddlepuns then pulls out his signature, Spore Focus Punch combo, one-shotting Pedro's Kabutops. After pivoting, he uses Duck Duck to KO Jolteon, and then Destiny Bonds to take down Pedro's Machamp with him. It's a 2 vs 3, and Pedro's Porygon 2 puts in work, setting Intimidate and Paralysis, using Recover to get around Burn and chip away Arcanine. Despite Chesto Rush strats, Arcanine, slowly but surely, falls to Jade. However, Toad revenges with Mach Punch, and Pedro is down to Mazael. Muddle Puns put it to sleep, and Light finishes things off with a couple hidden power ices. The score is 0-1, and Pedro decided to switch his lead to Jade. Let's get right into the battle. Muddle Puns sets Stealth Rocks, but gets frozen by Tri-Attack. Pedro goes for the KO with Slicer X, and we find Muddle Puns negated some damage with the Pasho Berry. However, fortune favored Pedro this time around and Sea Moon falls. After doing some damage with Light, a crit Earth Power does huge damage to Toad, an integral part of Muddle's strategy. Pedro plays around Spore by going into his Poison Kabutops, but Muddle secures KO next turn. Jolteon and Duck have the exact same interaction last battle. Pedro spams T-Wave in order to stall Wobbuffet out of PP before KOing the Tri-Attack. Pedro's Sea Moon is put to sleep, allowing Muddle Pun's Kabutops to set Swords Dance while Pedro's Machamp hits the field. He goes for another Swords Dance, lives off Sash, and goes for Aqua Jet, 2-hit KOing Jade, who Pedro switched into. However, without the previous defense drop, Star Platinum survives and secures the KO, but not enough to get around Spore Balloon. He bulks up and takes out Nidoqueen. He bulks up again and takes out Machamp, and Pedro is back down to Mazael once again. Pedro sets up a last-ditch effort push, but got greedy and Spore was landed. Raichu comes out, and Mazael wakes up, one-shotting Light with Earthquake. Arcanine comes out, dropping attack, and after trading blows, manages to pull off one final Extreme Speed, winning the battle and ending the tournament. With a score of 0-2, Muddle Puns was declared winner of the Spizzle 500. For prizes, I did talk about giving out perks and rolls to the top 3 in my Discord server, which I never did. So in the making of this video, months after the tournament, I finally got around to it. Thanks to everyone who made it this far, and I'll see you next time.